Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start to present then. And Dana, if your screen unfreezes at all or anything like that, please just let me know. If you want to jump in, just don't hesitate to do so. I'm also going to be managing the meeting, so I am going to be um, going through and adding people occasionally. So apologies if I pause. All right, here we go. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the parent and child relationship. And I'm Kate. I'm going to be the one talking about it. I am a school psychologist, formerly a teacher, but currently a school psychologist. And that's what I do with the majority of my time is I do psychological assessments for people that are in the school-based setting. And then I also do counseling, also for people in the school-based setting. I also am the parent coordinator and coach at Ensemble Therapy, and I do presentations just like this. So, today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to recognize what your child is communicating with their behavior. We're also going to discover the power of reflective listening and identify some effective skills to help your child self regulate. So, the first thing that I'm going to have you guys do is read this quick quote by Rebecca Eanes. So, I don't know how fast of a reader you are, but I'm going to jump in. And so, this is really how I'm going to be guiding the presentation is that misbehavior is not something that is being done to us as parents or reflective of us as parents or how we are parenting, but really it's just a style of communication. Not my favorite style of communication, but a style of communication nonetheless. And so, my philosophy with kids is that they do not enter this world with bad intentions. And oftentimes when I'm talking with parents, that's what the first thing I'll do is I'll try to reframe what they're saying. So if they say like, they just like say my name over and over and over again, right while I'm in the middle of cooking. So instead of it being annoying, which is still technically annoying, it's really them trying to connect with you. And when they're being super clingy or going through really clingy stages, it's just them trying to express love. When they're being disobedient, like this, I like this picture of this girl because I've seen that face, the arms crossed, the chin kind of jutted. And that's really just them trying to learn. And if they're being defiant, the best example of that is like, when you're trying to buckle in your toddler or preschooler and they're like, no, that's really just them wanting to grow. They want to buckle themselves or they don't want to be in the car or, whatnot. But trying as parents to look at your kids' behavior as a communication, not as a way that they're trying to like show, get to you or bother you. Let me rearrange my screens a little, just a sec to be able to admit people. Nope. And so using it as that instead. And for me as a parent, it helps to reframe because sometimes I'll get stuck in things. If you talk to me at the end of spring break when I've been with my kids for a whole week, I might be feeling different than I'm feeling in this very positive moment right now, right? But whenever I'm feeling like they're doing this to me or it's about me as the parent, I really try to reframe it and say it's actually about them and it's a communication component. So what we're going to do first is kind of go all the way back to, Psych 101, if you ever had that class in high school or in college. And if you're saying to yourself in high school, what? Yes, it is a high school course that some high schools offer, just crazy to me. We're going to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. And the theory behind this is that we cannot ask our kids to do this high level problem solving if their basic needs aren't being met. And we see this all the time in the school based setting. If someone has experienced a trauma or a significant or recent change, I'm not expecting them to be super regulated in the classroom setting. In fact, I'm expecting them to have a lot of really big needs. And so we're going to take care of those needs first before we ask for that next level part. The other part is hormones. Oh my goodness. This is something that, is so big, especially for our kids that are in end of elementary, middle school, high school. They're just trying to do their best through this haze of hormones and also trying to understand why things that typically didn't upset them do upset them. And the other part is it might be developmental, and so it just might be that they're going through a growth period or they're going through a stage, hopefully, right? Sometimes I'm like, it's truly a stage, it's surely a stage. And then it turns out just not be a stage and we have to actually work on it. But really thinking about that before you start to address your child's behaviors. Are their basic needs being met? Are they experiencing a big hormonal shift? Are the needs developmental? So I'm going to use the house as the brain house as my kind of way to discuss what's going on in the brain. And so I like this kind of visualization a lot. This is from Bruce Perry's book, The Whole Brain Child. Okay. And I use this when I'm talking about brains and everything like that with kids too. Um, and so what I say and how I describe it is you've got your upstairs brain, okay? And that's like your prefrontal cortex. That's where you think, that's where you process, which by the way, that part of the brain is not fully formed until the mid 20s, which is just bananas when you think about it. Like we've got people that are, in their early 20s teaching. And then your downstairs brain, that is your feelings part. That's the part of your brain that forms first. It's that reptilian part of your brain, okay? And that's a part of the brain that, when brains were first kind of growing and forming, that was a really important part of the brain. It helped you breathe, it helped you stay out of trouble. So, you're walking through tall grass and you hear a sound. It was very important because that sound might have been like a lion trying to eat you, and it's very important that you have that fight or flight ready for danger. But now as people, very rarely am I walking through tall grass worried about a lion. Yes, probably snakes. I don't walk in tall grass in Texas, um, but it is something that is still turned up. So, and it's turned up for some people more than others. And and so you hear that sound and you jump. You might be a jumpy person. And so that part of your brain is really called the amygdala. Okay. And with kids, I will use that language too. All the amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, your automatic nervous system, and they understand it. And so the amygdala for some people is bigger than other people's and it's more reactive. And so it might be that you have a kid that is just very in tune with that amygdala. Or maybe not. Maybe it's a kid that doesn't notice those things, which is on the other end of the spectrum of a problem. Um, and so we already discussed the prefrontal cortex, but to go over it again, it's that thinking part of your brain. That's what you want to have engaged. If your kid is in the middle of a temper tantrum or they're really stressed out, it's after school, they've got all this math stuff to do and they have to study for math and they're just crying, that they're not in their prefrontal cortex working zone. They're probably down there, kind of like listening to that amygdala. And then the other part that I want to talk about is your automatic nervous system. So you have your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. And so what those two parts do is they help keep your body aware and helps your body if there is danger. Your stomach stops needing to digest as much, your pupils dilate so you can see better in the dark. All these different parts engage. And then on the other side, when things are slower and less stressed, your body starts to digest things very well. And so we don't want our automatic nervous system to be constantly in that stress state. That's when people start to have too high of levels of cortisol kind of going through their blood and engaging with their system. And then it makes it so there are people that are having, high blood pressure or having a lot of other health complications. So we want a balanced system. And the other part that's really important to us as parents is that neuroplasticity. Okay. And that means that you can learn, you as a human can learn, but also your kids are able to learn. So I often kind of think of the brain, and I'll discuss it like this with kids as like a ski run. Okay. And so you have these worn in grooves in your brain. And that's what happens when you have a thought and then you have a reaction. Like my sister walks by me and I slap her. Thought, reaction. Okay. That's that worn in groove because that's what they always do. So instead, these changes of behavior is like putting a fresh coat of snow on top of those worn runs. Okay. So that means that, you're going to have to put a whole bunch of coats of snow on. It's not just going to take one time and she's not going to hit her sister, but it's going to be repeated over and over and over again. And they still might regress, the snow might melt a little bit and they'll go back to that old learned behavior because it's what's comfortable. But the hope is over time, through practice, that your brain can create these new pathways. Okay. And the other part is these mirror neurons. So that's what's really important when your child is having typically like a really hard moment. And they are looking to you, they're literally looking to you to help them regulate. And so we know that if we smile, our kids might smile, or if they're laughing, we might laugh. Because we see that as a human and you just feel that connection and you do those things. Your brain does that. And so it helps us really be empathetic. But also in those moments when they are having difficulty, helping them catch or borrow our calm feelings. So, what that means for you as a parent is that if your child is super dysregulated, trying to know your own baggage and your own triggers and turning off those alarms and so you can be regulated. Like I'll say, try to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Like you want to stay at the same even temperature. Now, sometimes people, when I say that, are like, what if I can't be calm? Like I'm upset. They just hit me, or like, this or whatever. If you can't be calm in that moment, you're a human and that's okay too. But taking the time apart to regulate yourself before you try to regulate them, because you can't regulate them if you're dysregulated. So we're going to watch a short little clip. Please put in the chat if the sound isn't working. It was working earlier when we played it. Sorry. There we go. Okay, hold on a second. I hear you guys saying the sound's not working. Let me try. It was working earlier when we practiced it. So yeah, I can put on closed captions. We just try to turn the sound back on.
I know it was working. What did I do?
Give us just a sec. Sometimes when I take over.
I put on closed captioning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see if this works. Tell me if this works.
No.
Okay. Well, hold on a sec. Let me try one more thing and then we'll just give up. And Dana, I'm still host, correct?
You are. Let me take me off as co-host and see if that happens. Let's see. No, you're still host.
Okay, I'll kind of summarize the video then, and we'll just kind of skip past it. There's another video later, so I'll send out a I'll send out a a
Layla says
link for
share the
this.
link. Yeah, there you go.
I'll send out a link so that you guys can all see it later with the video and the sound. So I'm going to let it play since you can't hear it anyway. And then I'm going to mute it for myself. So basically, what this, oh, is the video not even playing for you guys? Or is the video playing?
No, it's playing.
Okay. So basically, what this is and what we're going to be talking about next is how we show empathy for our kids. And so the theory behind this is when someone's having a hard time, showing for them, here, I'll put this close caption. Oh, I can just do the closed caption like you guys have already suggested. So I'll let you read it for a second then, since the closed captions are working. So what I like a lot about that video, and what Brene Brown is saying there is that, that difference between being empathetic and being sympathetic. And it's so often, and you'll start to notice this pattern if you are sharing something hard or you're listening to someone share something hard. It is so natural for us to be, to be trying to like, paint that silver around their rain cloud. And put a silver lining on it, because we don't want them to feel uncomfortable and we don't want them to feel that pain. And so we'll say, like, oh my gosh, that happened to my sister's cousin's brother, and they're totally fine. You'll be fine too. Or, well, at least, and oftentimes when people are in those hard moments, what they want instead is they want empathy. And they want you to just sometimes be there and sit with them in those moments. If anybody's ever read, there's a great book for this that my kids really loved called When the Rabbit Listened. And in that book, you really see all these people coming in to try to solve this problem when really, you know, someone just needed to be there and be next to the person having a hard time and just quietly being there sometimes is what people need. And we don't have to move into problem solving mode or quick answer mode or anything like that. And it's the same thing with our kids. And this is, from you know, your toddlers all the way through adulthood. Um, really being able to show empathy to them. And it doesn't mean that I have to agree with them. And it doesn't mean that I have to completely understand why they're so upset that like that Anne and Layla aren't talking to them anymore or, any of the things. But I can show empathy and I can be there for them. So really, like we've talked about before, kind of changing the way we're interpreting those problems and what those problem behaviors are, and trying not to view the behaviors as manipulation. This is another big theme that I see when parents come to work with me is that they'll say, well, they're just trying to manipulate me. They're just doing that because they know that if they do that, they'll get what they want. And so we'll just reframe it and I'll say, okay, so they have a learned behavior likely due to the way that you've answered that behavior request in the past. And so as parents trying to switch your role, instead of it being kind of like the authoritarian parent that tells your children, you're being bad, go do this, to more of kind of like the guide or encourager. So there's another video. I just got a thing about a way to try to fix it. So let me try this really quick and then I'm just going to, completely give up on it. Okay. Someone said it's on here. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to pause. I'm not going to play this video because although it's fun, throwback video of Everybody Loves Raymond. If you never watched the show, it's fine. This is a short clip about how we show empathy to our kids. And I suggest you watch it if you're watching it later, but I'm going to zoom past it and go straight into it. Oops, and backwards, of course. So the question is different ways to acknowledge their feelings and to show empathy for them. Okay, in different ways that we're going to go through today in our last bit of time that we have left is we're going to be using words. I'll talk to you how to do that, using writing, art, giving into fantasy when you can't give into it in reality, which sounds kind of bizarre, but it actually is one of the ones that works the most. Almost silent attention, and then with technology. So things that are not helpful when you're trying to acknowledge their feelings are, let me make this last person. Things that are not helpful when denying feelings. I see someone said it was actually muted. I muted it for myself for my own headphones. Is denying feelings. So if your kid's saying to you, I'm hungry. No, you're not hungry. We just ate. That's not helpful because that kind of makes them think, oh, I shouldn't listen to my body, or I don't know, what I'm trying to say, or mom, when I say that, mom doesn't listen to me. Teaching philosophy. This is when my parents really did all the time. And it's so hard for me not to slip back into it. But well, the reasoning behind this is nobody really wants to be told the reasoning behind it or, the psychological basis or history of something when they're having a hard moment. That's for later. That's for when they're calm and you're like, hey, do you remember yesterday when this happened? That's your time to teach, not in those moments. Asking a lot of questions. What are you doing? Why are you lying on the floor? What's happening over here? Or comparing them to others. This is a good, way to get the siblings to start fighting. If you say something like, your sister's never had that issue. I don't know why you are such a messy eater. Even the baby's cleaner than you. Things like that. Even if it's a favorable comparison, like you are so much faster at running than your sister ever was. Not a good thing. Just no comparing as much as you can. And if you're like, well, how am I supposed to, get them to do something? Just try to do it without comparing, just trying to shift yourself first. And then lecturing. When I was your age, I walked to school uphill both ways in the cold and, that kind of thing. Not helpful in the moment. It feels good for us as parents, I think, sometimes to do those things, the not helpful list, but it's not what they need in that moment when they need those feelings acknowledged. So these images are from How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen. Not the best images, to be honest, but I think they convey the point. And that's where I got these different ways to acknowledge their feelings. So the first one is with words. And this is what we utilize most often. The first thing, when your kid is like upset about something, and it could be like this, they wanted to go to the ice cream shop, but it's closed. Or, they've been asking for a new video game and you're just not going to buy it right now. Because, X, Y, or Z, who knows why. So the first thing is regulating yourself. Remember when I talked about those mirror neurons. So remembering that if you come into the situation hot, they're going to meet you in the situation hot. So trying to take that deep breath, resist the urge to engage in conflict. And then think about what they're trying to express. Okay. And then naming that emotion and reflecting it. So a lot of parents will say to me, oh, I do not name emotions with my kids because when I do, they scream at me. or they don't want to do it. So what I would say in response is take it case by case. Okay. The point of naming an emotion is to help your kid realize what they're feeling, because although you have had decades of experience, um, naming emotions, understanding what your body signals are sending you and what way you're feeling, they have likely had even less than a decade. I know I've had 4 decades of experience and I still sometimes don't know how I'm feeling. And so you're trying to help them. And if you get it wrong, that is totally cool. I get it wrong all the time. Oh, they're like, I'm not mad. Frustrated. I'm like, okay, like we're getting somewhere. And reflecting like that, kind of like with the words, it very clear and concise. I try to keep it super short. Okay. Don't go into a long tangent. Don't lecture. Just very clearly and concisely name and then reflect what they're feeling. You seem really disappointed. Kind of like he's saying, that's really hard. I hate feeling disappointed. That's all you need to say. I didn't tell them about, my cousin who was disappointed about an ice cream shop being closed 3 weeks ago. I didn't mention anyone else. I just am there for them in that moment. And this is, like I said, the easiest one, the one that we do the most often because we always have words. The next one is writing. So kids, especially, I mean, this works like all the way up, honestly, even through teens, but like, especially before they have an understanding of print, they see you writing stuff all the time and they know words are super powerful. And so I don't carry a small notepad and pen with me, but I do carry a phone. So there's that technology piece. So I'll say like, I need to write this in the, my notes app, or I need to text your dad this. This is so important. And just having them see that you are listening to them and you are even writing down what they're saying is super, super big. And like I said, even with teens, like, saying like, gosh, you know what? I'm so glad that you told me that. I need to write this down so I don't forget. Can make people feel powerful. Another one is with art. I am not an artist by any sense of the word. My drawing of an ice cream cone wouldn't even look that good. I am more of a photographer. So, I utilize that all the time. Like, if we're going, like if we're at Target and I said, we have to go to Target because we have to get, some more bleach. And then all of a sudden, Target's got the super cute kids' clothes up front, and they're like, we want this. I want this. So I'll take a photo. Okay, we got to take a photo for that so that I can remember that for your birthday. Spoiler, like they don't want it by the time it's their birthday. But if I said to them in that moment, you don't want that, you have 5 other sweaters, or it's Texas, you only need one sweater. They would be upset. They would scream. They would cry. But instead, saying to them, oof, I love that sweater. It is so cute. It's so fluffy and cozy. Thinking in my brain, of course, no one needs that. But then taking that photo helps them feel like, wow, she listened to me. And I even, have put them all into like a Google folder. And if people ask what they want, like if someone ever is like, oh, what does so-and-so want? I'm like, I got a whole folder for you. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 there. This is the one that I mentioned in the beginning, fantasy. You know, at first I was kind of resistant to this one. I was like, I'm just not a very playful parent, which makes me sound like a super fun parent. I am a fun parent. I'm just not a playful parent. And so, to be completely honest, this works all the time. And so it might be that like, you're out of like this morning, we were out of cheese sticks, which I know, thoughts and prayers, please. But it was a big deal. Everyone's packing their lunch and we're out of cheese sticks and, they're about to lose it. Especially, my preschooler. And so moving into that fantasy kind of component of like, oh, wouldn't it be so funny if the house was made of string cheese? Do you think we would take like bites, or would you still peel it, or would you not peel it? Would you peel it from one side and the outside? Like, what do you think that would look like? And then getting them to be playful in it. And then sometimes that can help pivot away from that frustration component or tantrum component. And it can help them feel heard too. Like, she knows that we want the cheese stick. Now, as an aside, did I write it down? We're out of cheese sticks and add them to my grocery list? Absolutely, because we had to make sure that they felt acknowledged and that I heard them. But it is a great way to kind of break it up. I use this a lot when they're tired. And I even use it for teenagers too. They think it's funny. I mean, they roll their eyes, but they think it's funny. Um, the almost silent attention, I don't know if you can tell, but I like to talk. So this is a harder one for me. I do it with my oldest more often than the other ones, where, it's just kind of like a monotony of drama stuff going on. And so I'll often say, like, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help? And if I know my job is just to listen, that helps me reframe things already, because I'm like, oh, I don't have to jump in and say anything. I just have to look and listen. Oof, yikes. Oh my gosh, really? See, even with the almost silent attention, I still can't help but talk. Um, you know, but nodding along, because sometimes, like in the video that you couldn't hear, they just want you to listen and be there. So back to that upstairs and downstairs brain. Okay. This is also from Bruce Perry, the same guy that did the upstairs downstairs brain, the whole brain child. And so in this kind of 3 R's philosophy, what he's saying is our first job is to help them regulate. Okay. And you can even use this like for any human. You can use it for someone you work with, your friend, your partner, your parents. So first you help calm them, you help them regulate, you help get that amygdala to quiet down, and you start to rebuild that stairway between the upstairs and the downstairs. And then you can relate with them. And so some people do want to relate through physical touch. Some people do not want to. So kind of asking them, like, what does that component look like for you? And obviously, if I'm talking to my 8-year-old, I'm not going to be like, tell me what that component looks like for you. But I'm going to say, like, the other day when you were really upset, once you calmed down, did you want me to give you a hug? They might say, yeah, I wanted you to give a hug, or I don't know. And so then we'll say, I'll try it next time. And then the third part, and the really important part, is that reasoning part. That's when we reflect with our kids, and that's when we teach. Okay. So we're not teaching when that misbehavior is occurring or that big behavior is occurring or they're throwing a tantrum. Remember, that's not when we're philosophizing. We're not even asking questions. We're just acknowledging their feelings or just being with them in the moment. Once they're calmer, that's when we go back in. Now, this is something that people are like, my kids don't do it. They will not reflect with me about something. They just shut it down every time. And so when we talk about it, a lot of times they aren't wanting to because they're so embarrassed that happened, that they lost control. And I'm not saying that the reasoning needs to be like that image right there where they're sitting and facing each other. In fact, many people find that super uncomfortable. Sometimes you can do it when you're lying next to them, like helping them go to sleep. Like, hey, do you remember earlier today when, you threw your book and, stomped on it? And kind of talking through and helping them learn. So, you seemed really frustrated. What could we try next time? Coming up with a couple different ideas, helping them just create that kind of loop for them to understand. You can't just have these misbehaviors, as we started in the beginning. They're not technically misbehaviors, but you can't have these explosions of anger. All right. I can't have explosions of anger at work or I would lose my job. Right. And so helping them understand when it's appropriate time, because we can't just damper the feelings, right? You've got to help them express it, but in an appropriate way. And that reasoning part is really key to helping them understand when it is appropriate to express that anger, how to express that, or those feelings. And then like what to do when they're coming out, or if you can't feel that control coming, like what do you do? If you try like lying down with them and talking with them and they're not doing it, they still refuse, you can try a movement activity. Like walking, like I find like evening walks, it's dark, we can't see each other's faces that well, we're just walking next to each other. That's an awesome time to do that reflection and reasoning part. It can also really help you kind of reconnect too. One of my kids likes to jump on our trampoline. And so we jump on the trampoline and we talk about it. Um, Other kids sometimes will prefer to do like art and connect it through art. Okay. So like, or building. I had one client I worked with who loved foam bats. And so his parents would, play foam bat with him. And that's the only time he would kind of reflect. And so once they get into that kind of cycle of it and used to the flow of it, like even though I'm going to have these misbehaviors, mom and dad or mom and grandma or whoever that nuclear family structure is for them, love me. They are not going to, you know, say that they hate me and stop loving me. They still love me, and we're going to reflect and we're going to reason about it. And it doesn't mean that they're trying to bring it up and make me feel bad about it. They're trying to help teach me. And once that becomes a more regular part of the process, once there is a big misbehavior or once there is a big kind of like expression of emotion, um, it'll get easier. So this is reviewing what I talked about earlier when you are discussing with them. And this can be, I don't suggest doing this if they're like throwing an active temper tantrum because they might hurt you. I'm not going to get down low if someone's throwing a temper tantrum. Um, but if I'm trying to show that I'm acknowledging their feelings or I'm trying to teach or express something to them, getting down on their level. You guys probably see teachers do this all the time, especially the shorter your kids are. Like so when they're in kindergarten, your teachers will get down and squat down and look at them in their eyes, hold their hands while they're talking to them, making sure that you're really saying your piece concisely. Um, and that's something that we as adults slash me as a human has a really hard time with. I want to kind of explain everything to you, but most kids stop listening after approximately it's 5 to 10 words. And that's kids. So that's basically like school age children, which is kind of bananas. So, making sure that if you're trying to say something, saying it very concisely and then checking for understanding. And not just saying like, do you understand what I said? But okay, so I said blank, 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 and I'll even repeat it because it's easy because I was concise. What did you hear me saying? Or what is your plan for what you're going to do? So the last time I'll go back to the upstairs, downstairs brain. But making sure that you as a parent are understanding that your kids are learning. Okay, so they're working to connect that upstairs and downstairs brain so they can make good choices but still be able to run fast and do all those fun things that their downstairs brain also has. And the theory is that when that stairway is broken, that's when they're tantruming and they're unable to make good problem solving choices. And so know that like even as that upstairs part of the brain is developing, things that happen to kids just because it is life can also block or overwhelm that stairway. So we talk about that, like, if there's something that impacts or affects them, like if they move or if a pet dies or a best friend moves away or their parents separate or they experience, the death of a loved one, expect that they might have behavioral regression at that point. And expect too that they're not going to be able to make all the good problem solving decisions that you would expect them to. And really, if you're kind of giving that kind of, I guess, grace, if it is to yourself, that you may also be having that same trouble. You might be shorter tempered and less likely, your upstairs and downstairs brain are working, but boy, you might just pop down in that downstairs brain a lot more quickly than you typically would. And so, really helping your kids know, even though they are struggling with that, you love them, connect with them in ways that they like to connect. Like I said earlier, some kids are really big on hugging and touching, and some kids don't like that as much. They prefer to connect over building Legos or drawing something together. And the other thing too that works for a lot of kids, and we utilize it a lot, like in recommendations in the classroom setting, is when kids are experiencing like big emotions, like they're in that downstairs area of their brain. Um, Having them release energy can help. And so, maybe, and it doesn't have to be like running all around the room or anything like that, but it can be like releasing energy, like having them balance on something, or having them, kind of cross, their arms and twist them, kind of get that corpus callosum, the connector, bundle connector between the two parts of the brain, the two halves of the brain, firing back and forth. Someone just got in from the meeting room. But having them, move their bodies is a huge way to kind of release some of the energy. And then sometimes it's easier to speak with them, and reconnect that upstairs and downstairs brain. And I like the name entertainment. Like I said, some parents really don't like that. They'll push back on me about that. So however, in your family or when you're working with your kids, that you can help them understand what they're expressing. Um, Again, if they have really uncomfortable feelings about naming it, then, saying like, your fists are clenched, just say what you physically see. If they don't feel comfortable with you saying, you look angry. And then that's the last page. That's how to find me. I'm going to stop the recording. And then if anyone has any questions, we have a little extra time because we didn't have that last video. But like I said, I'll also